Welcome back. He's the only Californian left, save for Marianne Williamson, in the race for president. Investment banker and philanthropist Tom Steyer is still trying to qualify to make the next debate stage in Iowa on January the 14th. He joins us from Atlanta, Georgia. I'd like to get into something you said not at the debate last month here in Los Angeles, but the one before that, where you talked about the federal government playing a role in the building of housing. We had talked earlier with the new L.A. City Council President, Nury Martinez, about the Wiener Bill, that's SB 50 in Sacramento, which would force cities to build density housing. Do you support that idea, and what role should the federal government play in all this?
Well, Conan, you know as well as I do that we have a dramatically inadequate number of houses in California and across the country. And we both know that the federal government can use its resources as a carrot to push states and municipalities to move forward on programs, to move forward on building programs, to change the rules under which they work. And it's absolutely critical that that happen. We have a housing issue that's stretching across this country. There has been an attempt to step away from public housing. There's been an attempt to let the market itself solve the housing problem, and it has not worked. We need the federal government to step back into this equation, to use its resources to push for affordable housing across this country again, and in fact, to make sure that it's done in a sustainable way so that the houses that we build also support our climate and sustainability needs.
But what about the idea that Washington or Sacramento should force cities in Southern California to build high-rise apartment buildings along transit lines or what are called job centers, which is the Scott Wiener bill?
Look, I know that the Scott Wiener bill didn't pass and had some issues, but the idea that Scott was pushing, that way of thinking about it, is something that I would support, that way of thinking. But actually, we're going to have to do this working with communities to make sure it works from their perspective as well. But the idea that we're going to have to build sustainably is something that's true. And we're going to have to accept it, and we're going to have to build much more. There is a shortage of housing. That's the root. I mean, we can see it in homelessness, but we can see it in skyrocketing rents. We can see it in the commutes that people are taking that are enormously long and keep them away from their families. So there's no question that there's a gigantic issue here in terms of affordable housing, and that it's at the root of our inequality. So not addressing this forcefully and proactively is a gigantic mistake. We're going to have to do that. I think everybody knows that. We have to use the resources and of the federal government to make sure it happens in an equitable and sustainable fashion.
And finally, health care, a major issue. Are Democrats, some of your competitors, painting themselves in a corner with their call for Medicare for all, the elimination of private insurance?
I know that everyone on that stage, including me, knows that health care is a right for every American and wants the federal government to use its negotiating and buying power to drive down the costs of drugs and insurance and private hospitals. But I am not one of the people who believes that the answer is Medicare for all. I'm one of the people who believes that a public option added on to the Affordable Care Act is the right way to go because it achieves those two critical goals and not taking the risk of starting all over on a healthcare system that's critical to every American.
Tom Steyer, Democratic candidate for president, thank you for taking